Hi, welcome to A Mile High and About to Die. I am Zach Blum, your co-host, along with...
Alex Blum, your superior co-host.
Slightly better than me, yes.
No, it's drastically better.
Well, yeah, if not drastically, yeah.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
We're in another one here.
Way down here, I'm doing great, yeah. What are we doing this week, Alex?
In your tiny little life, what step are we on today?
Doesn't even matter anymore. Yeah. Yes, it does matter, first of all. Yeah, what step are we on today, Alex?
I just asked you that.
Well, we're on the fourth step, which is...
I don't know.
Well, do you remember the principle behind this step?
Be a good guy.
It's, don't do drinking drugs.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Courage, I believe, is the principle.
It is.
Yes.
That is correct.
And the step, I believe, well, do you know what it is?
I do.
It's funny because obviously we do.
It's popped in our heads. Yeah. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory.
What does that mean?
Well, what the fuck does that mean? Holy shit. So courage and made a searching and fearless moral inventory. Okay, so let's back up and...
Of ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Not
before we
just
get to... I mean, so this is a huge step, and this is one that, to be honest, I wore red today because it's a heart color. It takes a lot of heart because it's fucking hard, you know? And it can be kind of a terrifying step for a lot of people. When you hear about relapse in the rooms, in the 12-step rooms, it often occurs when people start doing the fourth step. If they get to the fourth step, it gets hard enough, they have to look at some things, and it starts to get difficult.
This
and
really
so people
separates the kids from the adults here
Totally.
into action. It's like the first 3 steps is more internal, trying to get right with things, but here it's actually in the world we're taking real action.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like we've made a decision in step 3, and now we're taking some action in steps 4 through 9. So, what are those actions? Well, we're gonna make an inventory. So it means we're gonna be reading some things. We're gonna be writing some things. So we're gonna be, and really, like, some people do it with computer, but most people I know do it with, they put pen to paper, and there's a format that the 12-step literature gives you. It's writing a fourth step is kind of how we refer to it. And so I think to talk, before we get to the actual format of like how it works, what we're doing with, why would we be writing all this stuff, I would just like to touch on the first 3 steps to just as a reminder of like why we're at this fourth step where we're doing something hard and possibly we're looking at ourselves, which nobody wants to do.
I like looking at myself in mirrors.
Right, but in the insides.
Ugh.
Ooh, yeah, grody.
Icky.
So that we're looking at ourselves. The first step, how does the first step help us to get to this place of actually feeling the need to look at ourselves?
Well, basically you're saying something's really not working for me and I can't figure it out by myself.
Totally.
Which means I better do something different, otherwise I'm pretty screwed. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. The principles of the first step, again, are honesty and acceptance. So we're putting ourselves into an environment of honesty and an environment of acceptance. These are words that are, relationships with the truth is honesty, and relationships with love is acceptance. So we're putting ourselves into this environment where it's not just all truth, where it's like, you fucked all these things up and fuck you. It's with no love, where it's like, and it's not just all love and no truth, where it's like, oh, that's okay. You're okay just as you are. You never have to change. It's like, but I'm in hell and my life is terrible and I'm hurting everybody.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Right.
So it's kind of combining those two things into this new place. And in that environment, so the idea goes, all the good and true things about you are going to grow and blossom and flourish. And all of the false and painful things, well, maybe not painful, but the false things about you will start to fall away. The shadows, the lies, all of the lies in your life will start to become so obvious in that environment. So that will allow you to kind of be like, okay, maybe I have some things to look at. So that brings us to the second step. Do you remember the second step principle?
Hope.
Hope. It does a body good.
Yeah. So once we kind of take a look and say, hey, something's broken here and it's not working for me, there's good news. The good news, as they say, is that there actually is maybe something that can help, which is that there's basically a higher power, is to cut to the chase.
Right. Well, and maybe like the path that I've been on, the worldview that I've had may not be working for me. So and maybe the things in my head are based on an environment that I've grown up in or something that maybe wasn't showing me the whole truth. And that was hard for me to accept because I was so smart that I was an alcoholic, but not paying my taxes for a couple years and like, thought I was so smart, but how smart can you really be? How successful can you really be if you're not like functioning at some basic level? So I was really looking at that going, okay, like I can see that the path that I'm on is disintegrating. It's crumbling underneath my feet. It's time to get to a new path or I'm going to die, and again, we're inviting everybody in, not just the people that have the life and death addictions like we've had, but the people that have had something that, like they've had infidelity or they've had a sugar issue, eating or something, or your relationships are falling apart. You don't know why. You're stuck in a dead-end job and you don't know what to do about it.
Maybe you're addicted to collecting pewter mugs.
Yes.
You're wasting all of your money on pewter.
Pewter, yes, pewter specifically. Yeah, or you're just going to ARC thrift stores all the time and just, finding mugs
Sponsored
to then
by
showcase.
ARC. Are we ARC sponsored?
Oh yeah, well not exactly sponsored. We're sponsoring ARC actually. Yeah.
Reversal. I like that.
Yeah,
you got to give it back to get it back.
Exactly, you got to give it away to keep it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Interesting. So you get to keep the mug.
Right. So to the third step now. So we've talked about honesty and acceptance, and then we've talked about how that plays into hope in the second step, and then the third step principle is faith. So how does faith, play into? We're looking for a new path in 2. How does faith play into that in step 3?
So I think the idea is that, okay, I acknowledge there is a different path. I've never been on it before. I don't know how it works, but I'm going to have some trust that it's going to be better than whatever I'm currently been doing. And that kind of step into the unknown with some kind of positivity and hope, leaning on those who have come before us, is an act of faith.
Totally. Yeah, and like this is the road to
riches.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was thinking more like Colorado Springs. If you stay on this road and you keep going and you don't stop and turn around or get hit by a bus, you will end up inevitably in Colorado Springs.
And who wants to be there?
Who doesn't want to be in Colorado Springs? It's Manitou Springs maybe. Yeah. So we're looking for the path, and then we're looking for or a recipe or whatever you want to call it, something that's been tried and true that we've seen. Like step 2 is like I'm looking for a new path. Mine is fucked. Step 3 is like, okay, here's a path that other people who had my story or were similar to me in some way are able to find some success moving down. And I think that I can do that one. And I'm gonna throw caution to the wind and go ahead and do it. Even though it's invisible, even though I may not believe that I qualify for the good life at the end of it or whatever the case may be, whatever your ism is, I'm gonna start on this path and I'm gonna end up in Colorado Springs. Probably we should say something like Aspen.
Aspen.
Yeah, where
it's pricey.
The root beer flows like
dogs.
Like toilet wine.
Aspen.
Oh man, Aspen. All right, so that brings us to step 4, courage.
Courage.
So actually, that's interesting that you said courage.
Yeah, I think it's like I think where you're going is like the root of it in Latin or something has something to do with the word heart.
Yes, in French it's cœur.
Occurs to me, yeah.
Cœur. You just kind of quit on the end of the word.
Cœur.
And the end of the war, if you're into the French stuff.
Oh wow.
Oh.
That's a dig.
That's not about Quebec, by the way. Quebec, badass. French, you guys quit on wars. I'm sorry. It's a known fact.
So the 4th step principle is courage.
Courage. We do have you do start the fight. You do stand. No, I'm just. Yeah, the heart. It's all about the heart. We're moving into the heart space. Okay. So
that makes me uncomfortable.
Totally. Yeah, because a lot of us are not feeling too well. So, so in counseling classes that I've been taking, graduate counseling classes.
These aren't your bachelor's level courses, right?
No, I did bachelor school.
That's done.
Yeah, I'm done with the bachelor school. Now I'm doing graduating school.
Cool.
It's good times.
I actually already have a master's degree.
Yeah, so there that is. He's better than me, guys.
But much better.
Yeah, much better. Let's add some modifiers. So in this graduate school, they teach that this idea of we are trying to, when you're in therapy, okay, like what's the point of therapy? And they talk a lot about relationships. Like a therapeutic relationship is a way that you can really heal a lot of things, that we're relational creatures. If you can learn to have one really healthy relationship, then that flows out to all your other relationships, okay? So this idea of courage is like, okay, there's some things in the way of us having this healthy relationship. And we're gonna go and try to identify them. So like—
It's like you're trying to go to Colorado Springs, but there's like a stack of bricks in the way and like anger at your mother.
Exactly. Yeah, and you have like all these excuses not to go, and you don't even want to get on the road.
And you're like, don't sure you have the money for the gas.
Totally.
You know a guy who lives there he's once sold you drugs, you never paid him back.
Exactly. So you're like, I'm not leaving this house, basically.
Right.
Yeah, we're really getting a lot out of this metaphor. This is a little
Is it a
surprise.
metaphor?
Is it? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay. So it's uncomfortable, especially if we can kind of see, like I'm gonna have to deal with this thing and it's on the way to Colorado Springs. It could be a little bit anxiety provoking. It really is difficult.
Yes. Yeah, so there's stuff in our way that we've never addressed. Okay, and so this is to this graduate school idea. I keep on saying it like it's something extra special, but it's just learning stuff.
Special?
It is cool. It is cool to learn things. We're trying to identify what is getting in our way, and often these things are subconscious. And so we're moving into subconscious, like we'll have, so the way it kind of works is your brain gets aroused. And I'm not talking about boners, okay, although it does extend itself to that. I'm talking about like stress levels are starting to go up. And as stress levels start to go up, we have these subconscious triggers that remind us of earlier times in life where stress levels got to a certain point and we took kind of evasive maneuvers.
Coping mechanisms.
A coping mechanism,
Right.
Exactly. So we found some sort of comfort that brought down the anxiety level, the stress level,
Right.
and we were able to function again. Our brain doesn't like to be overloaded. It's trying to seek, this peaceful state.
Equilibrium.
Yes.
Homeostasis.
Totally, exactly. Homeostasis.
Stasis.
Master's degree. So yeah, we're trying to cool our brain down basically. And so when we are not allowing rational thought to be a part of that, when it's just blindly coming out of emotion, this is where you tend to see problems. Now it's also good for us. It like has saved our lives through evolution, and we are the descendants of people who had, good systems in there, but it will work under any conditions, whether I think that there's a threat or not. So if I think that I'm in peril, if I, they say the difference between, the brain doesn't know the difference between psychological pain and physical pain. So it will avoid psychological pain as much as it will avoid physical pain. So just like you're trying to, avoid a baseball being, thrown at your head in some scenario where that's happening. Similarly, if there's an opportunity for you to avoid painful psychological things like turning inward and finding out where the pain is coming from, your brain will subconsciously fight that and you will be more prone to reacting out of your unconscious. So they talk about these blind spots in AA and in the 12-step circles, that all of a sudden I found myself, next to a drink in a bar, 6 deep. And I couldn't even have told you, I remember a passing thought about something and I'd had a conversation with my boss earlier in the day. Like it was like, but all of a sudden, poof, here I am. And there was some unconscious stuff that happened there. And that was this old program that we have of, we found at one point that alcohol was the thing that brought that stress down and solved our problems.
So specifically, what is like, when we're talking about doing an inventory, it's kind of a lot of this like old-timey language. So what actually are we talking about in literal terms? Like what do you do for a 4th step?
So literally what we're doing is we are going looking for the things that are bothering us. And we're starting with like why am I not peaceful right now? Because the idea is if I'm not peaceful right now, subconsciously at some point I can hang on to it like, oh, I want to murder this guy. But at some point, instead of murdering the guy, I'm going to just drink instead or do that drug or do the thing that that helps you to feel numb again to that pain or to that stress. So what we literally do is we have this 4-column process. And
it's like basically a list.
It's a list. Yeah, you make a list and you start. So there's 3 major areas that you're going to look at. The first is resentments.
So basically people or institutions or whatever that I hold resent against, like could be the, politics, or it could be my grandmother, or that guy who looked at me weird earlier today.
Exactly. It could be anything.
Things that I'm carrying around with me, basically.
Totally. Or it could be, something around, like it could be a principle as well, like an idea, like
money.
Money, yeah. Like
Tacos.
People with money are good or are bad people or something like that. Like, oh, I don't want money then,
Right.
but I do want money. Like, there's something in the road that is stopping us from getting to the place that we need to go to be healthy. So yeah, so the resentment inventory is first. Okay, so that's the first of three. It's the largest of three. It's probably 75% of all the work that you're doing. And mostly it's the people on that list. So that's the first part. The second part is fear, a fear inventory. So everything that I'm afraid of, and that can be real things like bears.
I do not like bears.
Or it could be, ideas like failure or success or men or women or what have you. Both, all of it, all at the same time.
Octopi.
Yes, plural octopi or octopus. Just one really scares me. Giant octopus.
I'm fine with one, but when they congregate.
Yeah, it's real inky.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I ink, I start to
stink.
think, and then I start to drink. Okay, I'm going sideways a little bit. So so the last one is the sex inventory. Sex. We're talking about it. Oh my God. How do we talk about sex in this modern day society? Oh, I think we're terrible at it probably. But
like bad at talking about it or bad at doing it?
Well, probably. Well, kind of. Does it matter if you're bad at doing it? Oh, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Just in general. I'm just going to say sorry about that.
Sorry for everything.
Sorry for everything. So I want to go through each of these if we can, okay? And actually talk about the format.
Sure.
Because I'd love to have people, if they wanted to join along with us and give it a try, because this is a very empowering step. 4 and 5 together. We're going to touch on some stuff with 5 so that you don't lose your mind while doing 4, because you might get in touch with some anger, kids. Oh my God. And it might suck until you do a 5th step, which we will glance on later. And obviously we're going to do another episode on the 5th step next week, so tune in for that as well. But I want some actionable items for you guys. So, so basically when we're talking about this 4th step, we have 4 columns, right? So what do those columns look like?
There are 4 columns. The first column is who or what, the thing that you have this hang up with, a fear, a resentment, a sex thing. Next, the cause, like why this thing? If it's like, okay, I'm like mad at the donut shop around the corner because I went in there once, the cause would be because they like made fun of me when I didn't have enough money to like pay for my donut. And then...
Well, that's loaded. We're going into some subconscious stuff there, I think. Sorry, keep going.
And then the next column would be affects my, and then it could either be, it's more of a checklist set of options. It could be self-esteem, it could be pride, ambition, sense of security, or personal relationships. And so be like, okay, like my self-esteem is lowered or my pride because the donut shop embarrassed me about my inability to pay. And then there's a 4th column, which is like, maybe did you have some part in why that situation occurred and it didn't just happen to you like a victim, but maybe you want to get into that part later.
Yeah, we're just touching on it for now. We got a whole other episode about the 5th step. The 5th step is amazing.
That's a great one. It comes
much needed
between the 4th and the 6th.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 columns. What or who, what was the cause or kind of what happened, and then how it has affected the way you feel about yourself.
Totally. Yeah, and so some of the concepts there are, first of all, the way that it is advised to do this is, okay, we're kind of retraining our brain to think differently, and we're retraining our whole system, our whole program to run emotions differently too. So if I have problems because I have emotions that are out of control, and before I even think I'm going to go and do this drinking or whatever it is, there's unconscious things that we're all doing in our lives. And so for me to stay out of that unconscious stuff, we need to introduce a new format to thinking. And this is a format that kind of retrains you how to think if you need that. If you end up in a 12-step room, you probably need that. Does anybody else really need it? I don't know. But if you really want it bad enough, it's incredible and it streamlines everything.
And to me, effectively, like the change is going from like a mindset or worldview of victimhood to one of self-reliance or self-responsibility.
Exactly, totally. So the first column is who, and we want to like name as many people as we possibly can. There's some people that say, okay, if you want a real change to your life, you want to start listing every single relationship you've ever had. So for me, I was on hockey teams growing up, so I had 150 because not every single person on my hockey team wanted to be my best friend, if you can imagine that.
I can.
It's pretty easy to imagine, actually. I was probably pretty hard to get along with. I was a perfectionist. I was wound really tight. I didn't know I was going to become an addict alcoholic someday. I just was trying to get by,
So you make a list.
with achievement. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to sprinkle this in a little bit. So you make a list of all these people. And then so that's one column, and you do that one column completely. And
so
then
you're saying you had like 150 people.
150 people, because hockey rosters are big. I played on teams for 20 years or something, so that's a lot of people that I had resentments with over those years.
Okay.
So after you get as many people as you can get down there, you move on to the second column. The second column is what happened or the cause, and it could be, okay, so for instance, with these hockey guys that I played with, maybe this guy didn't think that I was very cool. Imagine that, didn't, talk to me often or didn't, so I would write those things down because, it bothered me deeply. And so this idea to go back to this word of resentment, it's not just straight up anger. It's actually this old French word, speaking of the French, to ressentiment.
Ressentiment.
Yeah, so, which means re-feel, like scent or sense. So it's re-feel. So it's not just an old anger. It's an old feeling, and because I have this old feeling, it sometimes breeds frustration on top of it. Because anytime I think about hockey, for some reason, I have my stress level raises because so many people didn't like me,
Right.
And meanwhile, there's like many people that did, probably, I don't want to be too generous there, but I had some lovely teammates who were amazing guys, amazing, some of my best friends today are these guys that I got to play hockey with.
What was the name of your team?
I played on a lot of different teams.
The best one.
The best one was probably University of Denver.
Okay.
Yeah, I played DU hockey, and we won a national championship my freshman year.
Go Eagles.
It's close.
Really?
That's BC.
Go Rocks.
But Alex played hockey also, at a lower level than me, though. That's one place where I got you, bro.
Spiritually uplifted higher. But
you were a servant in that role. I was a servant at DU. I was like, I felt like a journalist covering a good hockey team.
I know the boys.
My freshman year.
I'm in the locker room.
Yeah.
What's the name of the DU team?
The Pioneers.
The Nears.
Yeah.
The Pios.
Pios. That was what
Really?
It was. Yeah. Pios.
Pies.
Yeah, pie.
I clearly am not from Denver. But okay, so you're on that team. Go Pioneers.
Yes. And so anyway, there's people there that, there's people from all over my life that there's some things that happen that were like, that I might be angry at, like a parent because they got divorced and I was in the middle of that or something. But like I don't think that actually ended up on one of mine, but like I did have a divorce in my family early on. I know my parents are watching this too, so it's not your fault, guys. I promise.
It's your fault.
So, it doesn't matter if it's like a thing that I think is real, like somebody, beat me up or did something terrible to me, or if it's something that is like, I wish this guy would have liked me more. I wish I could have been a best friend to this person because I really respected them and they didn't. It was unrequited. A lot of unrequited love there, both in male and female relationships. Strewn all about my inventory. So 150 of those people, yes. And the things that they did to bother me, you want to be kind of exhaustive there. Is there anything else? And you kind of let these untethered, free floating hostility, as George Carlin would call it, let words be put to those things. And that's where this magic, like you'll be writing and stuff will come out and you're like, oh, I didn't even know that. Like and it feels good, and you're like, oh, that feels great. I didn't even know I was carrying that around all these years. It was in my inventory and I didn't even know that I was like lugging this piece of shit around. But then just writing it down just to kind of get clear on what it is. And a lot of it, fancied or real is what they talk about in what you're trying to find here.
And
some of these things are real. More of them are probably, you made up a reason for them. They don't love me and I'm not their best friend.
And I think for me, my experience has been that once you start along that road, it's kind of helps you remember and bring up other stuff. And it's sort of surprising to make a list of it all and go, oh man, like I carry around a lot of stuff for a lot of people and situations. A lot of things have happened that affect my day-to-day life, whether or not I realize it. And you kind of get the ball rolling once you start to look back that way. So I think I've encountered people who are like, I don't have any resentments, or I'm just mad at myself. And it's like, just sit down and start thinking, and you start getting in the mode of finding some other stuff.
Exactly. Like our mind is kind of trained subconsciously to avoid these things. And so if you actually kind of like, say, it's a new program, I'm looking for these things now, you actually start to see there's quite a number of them.
Yeah, it can be hard, right? Like it brings up old memories. You're really kind of picking at old things that have probably been settled there for a long time.
You'd be totally surprised. I mean, I had 150, and it's like funny because I can boast about like how sick I was, but I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have alcohol and drug addiction problems that do have resentment problems, and whenever you're around somebody like a resentful person, it just like grades on you, and it's not good for those. Like, I feel like it ages people prematurely, and there's science that suggests that it does actually, because you're in that fight or flight stage because you're thinking that you're being harassed all the time.
It's like you're an anger addict almost, or
for sure,
victim addict.
Totally, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't even know why I'm pissed off, but that's just how it feels to be me, right?
Or it's almost like, wouldn't it be nice if the world was out to get me? Because then it wouldn't be my fault,
Well, and then you start to
if it's
realize,
not, I'm really screwed. Like, I've really screwed up here.
That's exactly what happens, right? I mean, that's what I found. That's what I've seen. Anybody can do this stuff. I've seen church people do it without major, drinking. Like, they're pretty much on the straight and narrow already, and then they find like, oh my God, I was resentful to my grandma because she lived in my house while she was passing away.
Probably smelled weird.
Yeah, and you write that down, and it might sound petty, but you do want to write that stuff down because if you're thinking about it, there's part of your body that's like, there is something related to that. Like, and it made me feel unhealthy. Like, I was afraid. Okay, and so how do those things in that second column affect you over here in this third column? And that's where you really find that, okay, and this was kind of, I touched on it a little bit last episode, but so I've got these 7 areas of my life, okay? And it's self-esteem, which is how I feel about myself. Pride, how others feel about me. Ambition, that's what I want. Security, that's what I need to be okay. Personal relationships is like friendships and family, relationships. Sex relationships are just that, like any significant other types of relationships where sex is a factor. Not necessarily that we're having sex, but that you're dating. So even if you're dating somebody without sex, that's a sex relationship. And then there's Pocketbook, which is all things financial. So there are these 7 areas there: self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relationships, sex relationships, and Pocketbook.
And I think it's important to note, it's not like we're just saying this is what it is. This is just literally pulled from the AA Big Book.
Correct. Yeah, it's pulled straight out of the literature. There's other systems out there that I've seen. I don't know if it's based on this stuff that talks about 8 areas of your life, or wherever, your work relationship, your significant other relationship, your friendships, your relationship with your own health, your relationship with your creator, whatever that is. It could be DNA, it could be the universe, it could be God, it could be anything, right? But you have these relationships, and what we're doing is we're trying to account for, why do I not feel great all the time? And what we come up against is, over the course of life, we get hit with situations Carl Jung, famous psychiatrist, talked about this. It splinters off little parts of you, basically, where parts of you that are hurt, and they're like, well, it kind of peels back your worldview, and over time, it can change your worldview into something that's way darker. So this idea of like, if I don't feel good about my whole self, I want to go looking for the places where I don't feel good about my whole self and start to, there's a moral usually in there. Like, somebody has done something wrong to me, and I'm going to go look at that. And so we're going to get real still, and that's why it's helpful to write it instead of just thinking about it and moving on from it. I'm going to write it down, because if I write it down, it helps me to like kind of nail it to the wall and be like, okay, that one's done. Because we're also going to be looking for patterns over the course of doing many relationships, laying them out this way. So what I found from this, Alex, and I'd love to hear your perspective after I give you mine, is that the people that hurt me the most, that did things that actually physically harmed me or emotionally traumatized me, and trauma here is just an emotional shock. It can be anything from like your worst case scenarios of, carnage and death happening in front of you or to you, forcing things, or it can be like a divorce was mine, or somebody yelling at you, a loud noise to a sensitive little kid. That can be an emotional trauma, an emotional shock. So what I found was the worst things that had ever happened to me and the things that I've made up, basically. You know, the kid that I can barely remember his name who made fun of me once in a locker room, and the person who tried to ruin my career or something. Like, I had the same. It affected my self-esteem. It affected my pride. It affected my ambition. It affected my security. It affected my personal relationships. It affected my sex relationships, and it affected my pocketbook. It hit me on all parts. And if I just looked at it like, okay, did this really affect my finance? Like, occasionally finances weren't involved. But it was like, even if it didn't involve a girl next to me or something, if it hurt me, well, that hurts my ability to go right back out and try to pick up a girl, because now I've been diminished and now I'm going to be worth less on the marketplace of dating. So there were like, and part of me believes that. And maybe you do too. I don't know. I was pretty sick. But I'm not saying that you're healthy or not sick or any of those things. But if you look at it for yourself and you're not afraid of what you find, it actually kind of sets you free to be like, oh, these two things that like shouldn't weigh the same amount, I'm having weigh the same amount. To me, it was life or death. This motherfucker threatened my life by not liking me. This motherfucker votes the opposite way. They threaten my life and my children's life for doing that. Like, this motherfucker, actually could have killed me in that car. Like, it all weighs the same. And so there's a lot of, so we need to know how much it weighs so that we can we're trying to nail it to the wall to be like, okay, this is the case against this person, and I'm loading it up like a good lawyer. I'm going to hit him with everything I got. So how did these 7 aspects of a person's life, what did you find in your inventory, Alex? Were there patterns?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I think, what I found was what you end up seeing is, there's the same, you like pull out themes effectively there's the same things keep happening, and like, it's almost like there's a funnel I've created, and it's like, you give me any situation and I'm eventually gonna pull it into some dynamic where my self-esteem is lowered because I think I'm not good enough or something like that. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's a job or a person or a company, like, I will somehow navigate that into hurtful things that replicate themselves over and over. And so, I guess like you ever meet people who always have a problem, right? It's everyone else's fault, but like, there are other people that don't have problems all the time. And what the common denominator is that person, right? And so even though maybe each individual situation, it feels like, oh, this really happened, this person did this slight, like, if you keep getting the same outcomes, helps me to think, maybe I have some role in creating this effectively. And so in seeing the repetitive nature of the distress in my life, these 7 basically negative outcomes around personal relationships, security, all these things, the fact that they keep arising for me and not for everybody else makes me think I probably had something to do with it.
Totally. You definitely did. Well, so yeah, the idea here is like, okay, so we're going down this first column as exhaustive as we can. And like, for the people that are going to follow along with us, like, I would encourage you to do the whole thing. Just do every person that you can think of that bothers you. Or like Russell Brand teaches, he's been through the 12 steps, comedian, author. He talks about go 0 to 5 in age and think of all the relationships you had then, probably mom and dad and your brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and all those. And then you just go like every 5 years, like, which people did I meet during this time? And you just kind of do it chronologically. And that doesn't mean that you're gonna have bad relationships with all of them, but you might have some baggage if you're looking at life through an imperfect lens. And I'm not saying it's imperfect, but probably everybody's lens is imperfect, right? So
incomplete.
There you go. Better way to say it. Okay, grad school. If we can find a better way to look at this thing, we might be able to identify. Like, maybe we can move to a different, complete it a little bit more, right, and be healthier. Start to see things that we didn't see before, and that is kind of like a superpower when you're the person that can see, the problem in its whole form and start to solve it when other people don't even. They've trained themselves not to see it. So it's funny because like, we're these guys that ran our lives in the ground, and people kind of look at you with kid gloves on, like, oh, you're an idiot. You have, like, you've been through this thing. But honestly, like, and I get it, like, I totally have. I was completely wrong about everything that I was doing in my life, wrong-minded. But the things that you get out of it, like, put you so much back on the right side of things that I can see things now that I don't think other people can see, and not in a delusional way anymore. So I can sense when people are. Once you've experienced it and gone through something with it, you can kind of sense it in other people, right? So, yeah. So this idea is you want to be kind of exhaustive if you can on that first column of people, and then that second column of how it affected me, the cause and what happened. Again, be exhaustive. Is there anything else? No, there's some other weight there. What is that? Can I put that into words?
Yeah, I wasn't once heard it said that it's kind of like if you had you're basically trying to raise, R-A-Z-E, raise the ground of your life. Like this thing's a mess that's built on unsteady foundations, and I'm just trying to painfully clear all that stuff out. And I don't want to clear out half of it and then start building a new city, and it turns out that one's built on crap also. And so I think the thoroughness of it, the idea is that I just want to clear the decks completely once and for all and start with a clean slate. And if there's things I don't really want to get that into this thing, or I just will write some cursory notes around what happened, but really it really affects me, well then I'm not going to clear it out of my life. It's really here like a cleansing or clearing that starts with finding what's actually there to begin with. And so
let's shine a light on the inside and see what's going on there.
Right. And so I think it's, again, going back to the first 3 steps, it's really do I really trust that this is possible to be okay? And if so, I don't get to decide which parts are important or which parts I want to write down and which parts I don't. My job is just to get the facts on the table, basically.
Totally. Which is great. I mean, that's very well said. And so this,
yeah.
So this last part, with how it affects my self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, and so on. We want to we want to pause on each of those things and be like, and we're going to have these written on the screen for you, obviously. So, does this person who didn't like me and we were on a team, how does that affect my self-esteem? What is my self-esteem again? That's how I feel about myself. Yeah. Okay. So a teammate who's pretty close to me and sees me regularly doesn't approve of me. Okay, so now I've just moved down in market value of my own doing. I'm assigning this. I'm trying to figure out how much I'm worth. Now I'm moved down. How others feel about me, pride. Does that affect that? Yes, it does. I mean, it's another person, right? So and maybe that other people can tell that that's happening as well. So now it's like, okay, yeah, now everybody thinks that way because this one person thinks that way. Ambition, how does it affect what I want? Well, I want to be liked by everybody. And so that's really fucking with what I want. I want to be on a team where we're all best friends and I'm the odd guy out right now. So that's really fucking me up. It's not what I want. So security, what I need to be okay. Well, for me to be okay, I need to feel like people like me. Now that is kind of a bullshit statement, but it's a truth that I found going through this stuff. I needed people to like me, for me to feel good about myself. The conditions for me to have good emotions were exhaustive. It was so many things. And the conditions for me to feel terrible about myself were so easy. It was all I have to do is be around someone and wonder what they're thinking, and then I'm going to feel shitty about myself. So I was almost like I was addicted to these negative feelings more than anything else. And maybe that came from these early childhood things that we're going to get deeper into. That was one of my first traumas of I'm not good enough or people don't like me. So maybe I'm trying to recreate that just because it's familiar and there's nothing else to create. I don't know. So I'm going to go through those things slowly and piecemeal to start and just kind of learn how it feels to go through that and allow myself to feel it, and then move on to the next one. And so the idea is I'm doing, name after name after name after name after name. And it just becomes, okay, pretty much everybody I've ever known has affected me. The cause, well, pretty much I'm seeing all of these things again and again and again. This person makes me feel this. That person makes me feel that. I don't like that. I'm seeing all of these similar things, but you just kind of realize I'm writing the same 7 things again and again usually. The third column, affects my, it's usually, for me, it was usually affecting every part of me. The littlest things to the biggest things. You start to see these trends and you're just doing it rotely, and this is how we reprogram ourselves out of these old shitty habits and into these good habits. So that's a lot of stuff right there. Step 4 is a biggie. It's a ton of work. It's the keystone to getting through the steps is to do an honest and thorough 4th step, searching and fearless moral inventory. So the fourth column, Alex, can you touch on the fourth column? It's technically what we do in the fifth step with a closed mouth friend. Somebody's going to keep a secret for us. So what do we do in the fourth column?
Basically to look at that scenario and see like where did I take part in creating it, basically. So it's like, oh, like, you know, somebody on my hockey team doesn't like me, but, you know, I did steal his wallet last week, you know, or, you know, whatever. Like, you know, that girl rejected me, but I also, you know, yelled, you know, drunk at her friends at a party, you know, whatever. And so it's to kind of say, all right, these things didn't just randomly happen. I was there, I had some part in it. And so it's to say, okay, where did I participate in this thing that happened? And then you write that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's really kind of what we're doing here is we're investigating, and we're going to nail them to the wall, and then we're going to allow ourselves, if there's anything that we're doing, now that we've done it so intensely on them, now we're going to let, you know, kind of the opposite happen. I'm going to go looking at me now. Where did I participate?
And I think to kind of, you know, steal the exciting punchline is it turns out you were pretty involved, and actually, though that's sad in some ways that we create all this pain in our lives, it also is hopeful in the sense that, well, if I'm doing it and I have some say over how the way I behave, I can change and get different outcomes. I may have never seen those outcomes before because all I've known is creating these patterns over and over, but I believe that they're out there. And if I can really have clarity around, oh, like I tend to think people don't like me, and so then I act in ways that doesn't trust people, well, I can change those outcomes. And so it's painful to be like, okay, actually, I was the cause of almost all of these things, or if not the complete cause, I participated. There's other people that could have been in the same situation and never had these issues. There was people on the hockey team that everybody liked, for example. And so it's power, though, to think, okay, actually, I have some semblance of hope if I change the way I behave to have a better life.
Totally, yeah. And so we'll cover that more in depth, obviously, in our fifth step. There are a couple other moments, things that we want to highlight. For our resentment inventories, you know, people is like I said, it's probably 40 or 50% of all of this written work is just going through the relationships in your life and looking for those patterns in those first three columns. Places or institutions, we talked about it, but this could be a school that you went to, or you know, right now it's politics, right? So a political party that you don't like, or you know, the IRS or the government, or you know,
I love the government.
Institutions. Yes, right. Yeah. And then, so there's that same exact thing. You know, what was the cause of that? You know, what happened? Well, I didn't pay my taxes, and then I owe them money, and I hate thinking about them because it makes me feel stressed out. And you know, so that's an idea there. And then principles is the third piece of this resentment. Now, this is kind of a deeper level thing. I went through, when I was first going through the steps, I just kind of glanced on it, but this is where something I think we can really kind of dig our teeth into for another minute or two here and just talk about, like, this is something that I went to other places besides AA to get really thorough versions of a principle inventory, you know, and a principle inventory could be like, I heard somebody in a meeting say once, like, well, my mom was a drunk and my dad died in a ditch. So my guiding principle was, I'm either going to be a drunk or I'm going to die in a ditch. And he became a full-blown alcoholic, and he almost died in a ditch like 20 times. And then he found another way through being able to find sobriety and go that direction and reprogram that underlying principle. So we come with a set of principles, like shitty ones. Like one of them for me was like, oh, rich people are bad people, you know? And so I found myself getting up to like successful points where I could have like had a big promotion in a job, and then I'd find myself like quitting those jobs or self-sabotaging. So if you're a big self-sabotager, there might be something underneath some of those things.
That's one of my hobbies, is self-sabotage.
Oh yeah, but you're terrible at it compared to me. I'm a pro, okay?
Really?
That is one place I'm way better. So this idea, what I found was whatever I was believing in that belief space.
Your believies.
My believeries, yeah, like I believe, you know, like in the back of my head, those really, really quiet things like, well, you're not going to get that job, so why even try, you know? Well, you're a piece of shit and you know that, so why she's not going to date a piece of shit,
If you're a piece of shit and you know it, clap your hands.
Did you actually clap? Did you fake me into that?
I know I did it.
You faked me out. Thank you. That's the real. Oh yeah. All right, touching stuff. Yeah, reach out and touch somebody. So whatever was happening with these ideas of whatever I'm burying, whatever I'm planting these seeds with is going to grow, And so if I, like, for a lot of years I was in the workout space, like telling myself if I turned up the music loud and like started being like, you're a piece of shit, get the next rep, you can't do that, it would jack me up. And I was like, I can fucking do it, And so what am I really creating there? First of all, I'm planting a seed that I'm a piece of shit and I don't deserve to be here.
But things do grow in manure.
Totally. Very well in manure, as a matter of fact. But then I'm also like getting jacked up on it. So like I'm creating this controversy. So it's almost like I have this dialogue going in my head that whatever is being said, that's going to get me all jacked up and I'm going to I'm going to rise up and overcome that. So now I'm like programming myself at this deep level where I'm probably going into situations in life where I'm like trying to be, oh, what is this person saying? Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to go sit next to them and I can't wait to have
almost
this.
Almost like an antagonistic framing.
Like I couldn't wait to sit on a bar stool next to like a Jehovah's Witness. Of course, you don't find many. Yes. Or a Mormon. Of course, none of these guys like go to bars. But I was like, oh, I just want to like lay into them about like, religion. Oh.
That's why you were at the bars looking for Mormons?
Yeah, I literally like wrote short stories about, I like fancied myself a writer and I wrote short stories about like, what would happen if they came to my front door?
Ooh.
And it was crazy, So yeah, I'm being a crazy person. I'm creating this programming that jacks my emotions up. And like, that's how I get this juice. So all of a sudden,
I love juice.
I'm like being all juicy in my life, like trying to recreate these situations. So now all we're doing is like, we're trying to go in there and a good guiding idea here is, what are your limiting beliefs? So, principal inventory could also be, what are your limiting beliefs? What are the beliefs that are limiting to you? And if you give yourself 5 minutes, if you're not going to do anything else in this episode, if you did that and just said, okay, person that I am, what are 5 limiting beliefs that I have? In 5 minutes, you may come out with three to 10. And just put your pen to paper and see what comes out. And those things, you'll be like, oh yeah, like these are familiar, but I've never said them out loud. And that's this insane thing. And what will happen that I found, the craziest thing is that whatever you put into that belief space and then you plant those seeds and you water it, it becomes true. So eventually I did become a piece of shit. I was acting like one for sure. I didn't think I was one. I would have told you otherwise. But once I got sober and I started, looking at these things with some fascination and finding some objectivity through so much pain, I needed to find some objectivity and look at it objectively in this 4th step. Okay, I see that I'm becoming a piece of shit. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. And you hear that stuff all the time, but this is how it happens. And of course, I was keeping myself numb to that process with alcohol. Everybody has something that they're hiding from themselves and you don't even know it. So it's the way that the brain self-regulates, and it's not, and here's the other thing, like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Is it your fault?
It's not anybody's fault that they're doing this. And that's the thing is like, now that's a big thing. I hope there might be an echo happening. It's not my fault that I am an alcoholic, but I take responsibility for it so I don't go back to that lifestyle.
Yeah, so it may not be your fault, but it is your current problem.
Correct, yeah, either, whether I take responsibility or not, like the people that are dying of alcoholism and don't make it in, like, they're blaming everybody else too. Like they don't have a chance to change their thinking out, right?
And it doesn't unfortunately, it doesn't matter if whose fault it is. Like I'm the one in the situation. And it's
Correct.
it's like if I was if I was just woke up in the woods with no food, like I wouldn't be like, who put me here? I'd be like, how do I find some food,
Right. Totally. Yeah, like this is my predicament. How the fuck do we get out of it? This is how you do it, and this is how you take responsibility. And then when you take responsibility, by the way, you get meaning in your life.
Meaning.
So you get the more responsibility you can start to take for things, like if you extreme accountability, you start to get extreme meaning and extreme levels of like joy and emotion, positive emotion in your life back too. So there's this crazy relationship with that.
I like that.
So the last 2 things here are the fear inventory and the sex inventory. Alex, the fear inventory, if you will. Dibs on sex.
I guess it's, what are the things that we're, afraid of? I guess for me, I had fears around, the future of my life, fears around, people in my life, fears around, you know, that, I'm never going to have enough money to be stable. I'm never going to have a family. I'm going to die alone. I'm not smart enough. All these, things that prevent me from being able to sit in kind of serenity or think that I'm on the right path, because there's all these dragons around all the edges of my map. And it tends to be that, have you ever heard that? Like, we draw dragons at the ends of maps. Like, wherever we can't see past, we tend to fill with scary things. And so I fill that with all these fearful beliefs, and that keeps me from trying to figure out what's actually there a lot of the time.
Wow, that's profound. Okay, so and also the format of the fear inventory itself is a little bit different than the resentment inventory. It's simple. You just write all the fears that you think you have, and then you write where you think it came from. Like the time, bees, because I got stung by a bee and it fucking hurt. You're really just kind of roughly identifying what it is, where you think it came from, and it could be, fear of women. It's like because I got dumped really hardcore in my first relationship, something like that. So it could be like these big, overarching, psychological themes, and it could be bears and bees and things that sting.
Crabs.
Yeah, for sure. A couple different kinds of those.
Which is a great segue into the sex inventory.
Sex inventory. Yay, sex. We're talking about sex. We're doing some sex, and we're talking about sex, and then we're writing about sex, and we're finding all the things we want it to be and all the things we don't want it to be.
Wow.
That's morality in a perfect key. A little off key. I'm a little off key in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Not just in the sex inventory, but okay. We're having a little bit of fun, okay? Like to be a little bit of fun in this area. So, look, we're not here to, it says very plainly in the language when you're getting into this stuff, people have different ideas about sex. Some people are like, sex, and more sex, and some people are like, only when making babies, And so we're not here to argue with any of that, and we're not here to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct or conduct in general. So we're not here to be the officiate, judging people. All we're here is to look at our own stuff and to find, what our morals are. Like where, am I producing feelings that don't feel good because I'm or am I producing feelings that feel good, internally, not just the physical part, but the moral part. Do I have a moral code when it comes to sex? We're not trying to apply somebody else's. We're trying to find what our own is.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a higher power. It's not that the thing isn't to say this is what it is, but just that you ought to figure it out because it's going to inform your life if you want it to or not. And so in the same way, there's no right way that is prescribed about what's healthy or not healthy, but the right thing to do is to figure out what it is for you.
Totally. So this is the third part. We talked about resentments. We talked about fear, and we talked about sex. As you've noticed, these are all natural drives that most every human being has born within them.
A thing I like to say is like sex addiction is, they say it's like having a crack addiction, except the pipe is attached to you.
Yeah, that's about right. We want to get those rocks off.
But I think more seriously, it's like, there's some things like we can abstain from completely, like alcohol or drugs, but things like sex, having emotions, these aren't things we can just get rid of or, just say, no, that's my old life, And so it's a little bit more complex how to navigate those things, because even healthy people engage in these things. And so it's much harder for me to moderate like something than it is to just say no, cold turkey kind of. Exactly. If someone told me like you have to smoke 2 cigarettes a day, that's much harder for me than no cigarettes, Right. So something similar, I think, with sex or emotional sobriety is, how do I still live with this thing but treat it healthily?
Yeah, so
more subtle.
The thing that we're looking for here, again, is not like this raunchy story of like, oh, I did it like this, I did it like that, I did it with a wiffle ball bat. So, no, I'm so mature when it comes to this, by the way. We're really trying to find out, like, what are the patterns happening in these relationships? Where am I being selfish? Where am I unjustifiably arousing bitterness and jealousy? These are some of the questions we ask ourselves. We're going to put some of those in the bottom of the screen. We're really trying to figure out, like, what is this character as a person who has sex, and what is the ideal that we've been shooting for, so to speak? So Yeah, sorry. I mean, we are still 6-year-olds in some ways. Probably 12-year-olds. It's probably a 12-year-old joke. So the idea here is that we want to find an ideal. What is it that we were trying to achieve with all of these relationships? And what you probably find is it's pretty consistent. It's a good ideal. You have a good ideal, is what I found. People came from really good places when they went into this idea of having a sexual relationship.
I don't think those people think their idea is like, I'm just going to ravage town and make everyone feel bad about themselves and then have 7 unwanted pregnancies.
Right.
Like I don't hear that one come up a lot.
Though it does though the outcomes are there.
Right.
Like it may have started with I'm upset at women and this is how I'm getting back at them.
Sure.
And it's just a pattern to notice, and you don't like take yourself to jail over it. It's more like let's just find what the pattern is and see. Again, without judgment, what is it that's going on here, and why do we think that's happening? So, it's a slightly different thing in that you're going to ask some different questions to find out, basically, was this selfish or not? What should you have done instead, if there is any of those things? And mostly, what I found was, it wasn't always selfish. A lot of times, I had a lot of great relationships, but towards the end of my drinking career, it really started to be like. I probably wouldn't have slept with that person if I wasn't drinking. I probably wouldn't have lowered my inhibitions to that point. So yeah, I mean, like I probably shouldn't have drank. I just saw that so much through that column of like, oh, so that's the thing that I can learn. I'm not drinking anymore, partly because I don't have my inhibitions lowered. That I'm trying to measure myself, so to speak. Like I'm trying to find my value by who I can sleep with. I'm trying to find out here what I'm worth. And I'm getting into a crazy cycle.
And I'm also having to like numb out the parts of myself that it's not, certain behaviors aren't good for me, so that I can pursue these kind of short-term sexual impulses.
Exactly. And we all have sex problems. That's what it says. That goes for everybody. Everybody's had sex problems, either too much or not enough, or physical issues going on. So this is just about, look, we're going to look at all parts of us, and when these this resentment drive, like it's built in, like. When you go to the watering hole, like if I find a common enemy, like I'm gonna react like it's fight or flight or freeze, So resentment is a built-in drive. Fear is the same kind of thing, fight, flight, or freeze. And sex is a built-in thing, like we're going to reproduce. It's going to happen. Like everybody's done it before us, basically. So these things are built in. How do we not let them completely run the show? And that's ultimately what we find in the 4th step is that. We didn't have anything that we shouldn't, there was nothing that we had extra that, was bad. It's just that we were out of order in our priorities and how we were putting these things forward. This idea of the higher power.
Do you want to hear a great quote I know?
I do, actually.
It's in the book East of Eden, I believe,
John
by Steinbeck.
Yeah.
And it says that all men's sins are shortcuts to love.
Oh, I want to cry right now. It's beautiful.
Don't cry.
Yeah. So, yeah, and ultimately, probably everybody has good intentions in their heart, the highest of intentions in their heart. Now, whether you pave yourself a road to hell or actually find a way that you actually want to live those forward, that's what we're talking about here. We're standing at the turning point between, I think I'm on this road to hell and I don't want to keep going. It's fucking terrible already. Or I think I can go and find this other way.
To Colorado Springs.
And this idea of this higher power is the new thing that I'm putting in charge, even if I don't believe in it. I'm doing this 3rd step prayer. So anytime that you're having rough times going through, the thing in charge, when you have a resentful person in charge or a fearful person in charge or a sexy guy in charge, like they want to stay in charge. My penis wants to stay in charge. My fear wants to stay in charge. My anger wants to stay in charge. It doesn't want to be questioned. It doesn't want to be investigated. So this idea is like, well, actually, we know that if we leave that in charge, it's going to run me into terrible pain and trouble. And for me, it's going to lead me back to a drink. So what I know is I need to be letting something else be in charge. And so that's where this idea of the higher power, even if I don't believe in it, when things start going rough, I can do this 3rd step prayer that we learned from last episode. I have it memorized, or some kind of prayer. You don't have to believe in any of this stuff, but I think we're built in a way that when you start saying a prayer or just words in your head to a God you don't believe in, like that's how it started for me. It cleared all the other thoughts out. I don't know why that's how it happened. I think it's a discovery more than anything else. When I pretend like I'm talking to the creator of everything, it clears all the other noise out in my head. And I think it kind of assumes that maybe it's because we're social creatures. there's a new chief in charge, and I'm going to follow whatever that chief is telling me to do. And it doesn't tell it to me explicitly. There's places I can go to try and read it, but I can listen to it when people are speaking to me. But it's like an intuitive sense, and I'm trying to find that. So the sex inventory, to wrap this up, is we're trying to find an ideal and to let this God of our own understanding shape this ideal and let us start to strive towards it. So all of a sudden we have something to aim at, so to speak. And we're trying to move forward to that now. We find we might have some goals when we get these things out of the way from running the show and to run from that, or be angry at that and fight that, or have sex with that. All of those, we start to find, some peace and serenity possibly. And at the same time, I do have to say, the fourth step is, again, it's like the number one step for people going back out to their old, whatever their thing was, their old addiction, relapse. I will say, if you're working it, you need somebody that you're talking to regularly through those things. Because for a guy like me, I don't know about you, Alex, like I thought I wasn't angry. I told my sponsor, I was like, oh, I'm not angry, so this should go pretty quick. I've never been an angry guy. And he was like, oh, okay, well, do you feel weird about anything? Like any people when you think about it? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's like everybody. He's like, oh, yeah, just write their names down. I was not in touch with my anger. I had stuffed it down deep because I was, when I was a kid, probably my dad yelled a couple times, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be loud, and because I was sensitive. I'm not going to be this loud guy. So I started to like shove all that anger down. And now I have a relationship with anger, and I need to know when it's acting in my life so that I don't do stupid things anymore and, take stupid actions out of anger anymore. So we're getting in touch with this. And if you haven't been in touch with it, it's going to feel so powerful. You're going to be like, oh, everything's all so clear all of a sudden. It's all her fault, or it's all his fault, or it's all my fault, and, terrible things will happen. That's normal. That's normal. So just keep moving. You'll get that power. You'll feel that surge. You'll think that your whole life is about this thing suddenly. And then hopefully you'll live to fight another day. You'll just keep moving forward through it, and you'll find that, oh, it's actually, if I really get in touch with it, I feel that same anger for all the people that really did me wrong about the littlest things that barely went wrong. There's that sense of now I'm in touch with my anger, and that's good because we want to know what anger is up to.
And when we, bring to the fore these kind of uncomfortable feelings, it's sort of like we have one option, which is to shirk away and go back to previous behaviors, okay? Or rise to the occasion, basically, and walk through it. Another quote I've heard is like, if you're going through hell, keep going. But this idea, it's like, really a chance to face these things and get over them rather than let them drive potentially the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So next week, we're going to be coming back with the fifth step principle. Remember what that one is?
Yep.
Can you tell the fine people at home?
No.
Maybe if you had some more integrity, bro. See what I did there?
Oh, the principle.
The principle is integrity.
Integrity.
Yeah. So we'll pick up on step 5 next week. And thank you so much to Blackwater Audio, Tyler Duffus, for our production.
Duff?
Yeah, buddy. And for a request, Animal Cannibal. It's available anywhere music is sold. That's our theme song. Oh, yeah. A Mile High and About to Die. Step 4. Peace.